Let's have a look at the Flying Swallows stitch. It's one of my favourite stitch patterns, and it really suits a hand-painted yarn with short dye lengths. It has to be worked in the round. It's really unpleasant if you work it flat. So if you wanted to do a flat object, I would put a steek in it and cut it later. This is my marker yarn for my beginning of round, and I'm about to start the third round of this pattern here. And so I'm going to knit 4 stitches to get into position to set up my next set of flying swallows. And you just knit into the stitch from the previous flying swallow just as usual. Now, once you've got the first round set up, it's pretty easy to see that your new set of stitches are positioned in between the old ones, so that's going to be the base of my new flying swallows stitch. Every alternate round you use the 2 colours. So here is my main colour, my solid colour, the blue, and my variegated is the pink yarn. So into this stitch I'm going to knit once, but don't let the old stitch go, and let enough slack come through so that you don't pull on this stitch too much. This background fabric is a bit loose for flying swallows, but I wanted you to be able to see things clearly. Now a double yarn over, so that's twice around the needle, and then holding that on the needle, go back into that same stitch again and knit one more time. So into that one stitch I've got 4 pieces or 4 wraps around the needle, a knit, a double yarn over and another knit. And if you have a nice firm background fabric, this stitch doesn't get stretched out quite so much. Now I just jump behind those 4 with my background yarn and knit 3 stitches to get me into position for my next flying swallow. This is going to be my flying swallow stitch, so let's do that. Since I'm using 2 hands, I'm holding my contrast yarn, the one I want to be the most dramatic, in my left hand, and trying to be consistent with that. So I've done my knit, double yarn over knit, and you always want to have 1 stitch beyond the freshly made swallow, because when we come to tidy up the swallow and make it bloom on the next round, you'll need a stitch on either side of it. So I'm just going to move my stitch position around. I'm going to continue that across this next needle back to the beginning of the round, so that will be my swallow position here in the middle, and then there'll be another one here. So it's a swallow stitch, 3 plain ones, a swallow stitch. I've reached my end of round position, and I'm just going to flip my marker yarn to indicate the start of round, and I'm going to move my stitches around a little bit because I find these stitches just keep migrating, so my beginning of round is actually going to be here now. And round 4 is the making the swallows blossom out. So we'll start on our new needle. When you're 1 solid coloured stitch before the group of 4, we're going to spread it out to the side by making a right slanting increase. So that's a knit 2 together for most of us. So I've done a knit 2 together. Then I'm going to slip one of those yarn overs off, so I'll tuck my needle into it and let it unwrap. So this has an element of a slip stitch design about it. And then I'm going to take that last one and slip him knitwise and slip him knitwise and do a slip slip knit with those 2. And all of a sudden that little cluster of 4 has turned into this nice little blossom. And if you're working with yarn with a short colour length, then each of the blossoms potentially can come out a different colour because all 4 wraps are made from about 1 inch or 2 inches of yarn. This round I'm only using 1 yarn, and each time I get to the blossom I'll do a knit 2 together, drop one of the double yarn overs off and a slip slip knit. And there's the blossom completed. and they stack up nicely in between the ones of the previous round. I'm back at my start of round once again, or very nearly, so I'm going to work that last stitch of the round. Take the top end of my marker yarn and swing it between the needles, and now I'm going to get ready for my next patterned round. And the next pattern round just lines up with that first pattern round, so this is going to be my blossom stitch. With my marker yarn travelling vertically up the work, I'm actually missing out a swallow here, and I could potentially put another swallow stitch in there at the end of every round too, and then my beginning of round position would just spiral around the circle, but you wouldn't have any line or interruption visible and remove the joggle in the design. If you wanted to do this for a flat blanket, for example, what I would do is I'd put 2 marker yarns in, one to the right and one to the left, with some steek or extra stitches in between them, work the fabric in the round, and then cut it open later. The problem with working this to and fro is that you've got to do the decreases on a wrong side row, and your contrasting colour yarn is always in the wrong place. So let's have a look at some examples of designs I've used this stitch in.